And I'm going off.
Okay.
Okay. Hello, everyone. My name is Shomnath Ghosh. I'm pleased to bring you to this webinar on emerging technologies in the infrastructure sector. As you're all aware, the world is changing rapidly. The building blocks of technology that are driving this change are artificial intelligence, machine learning, Internet of Things, augmented reality, and virtual reality. I'm pleased to bring you all made possible emerging technologies in the infrastructure sector by modern telecom networks that are already on 4G in the country and would soon be adopting 5G. This webinar will give you a ringside view of what is happening and what the future holds for us. I would like to introduce the president of CEI, Mr. Amitabh Ghoshal, an eminent professional engineer in the infrastructure sector. He would be introducing the session by giving his perspective about the industry and what lies ahead. Mr. Ghoshal, please.
Thank you. Well, my privilege to participate in this happening webinar, just fits with the current requirement. And I represent CEI. As you know, CEI is Consulting Engineers Association of India. CEI is the prime organization representing consultants in the global scenario, because we are the member association of FIDIC, which represents the consultancy industry all over the world. And being member association of FIDIC, we are responsible not only for the consultant professional, but we take it upon ourselves that we must represent the engineering fraternity. The engineering fraternity, particularly in our country, had not been so privileged as to occupy the front seat, particularly with the conditions in the country. The engineering sector represents the entire development of the world. And without the engineering sector, the world would not develop or would not sustain. But even then, it felt that engineers do not get their due share. And we have been trying to put forward the voice of the engineering sector in India and in our neighboring countries. This is a webinar which represents the requirements of the entire world today. CEI is an old organization. It is celebrating 60 years of its existence. And we are holding this webinar instead of seminars that we would have held last year. We are celebrating through webinars this 60 years of our existence. And this only reflects the change from a physical seminar, we have moved to virtual webinar. And the future is going to be much more different and going to change every day. So it is essential that we make the engineers, the engineering fraternity aware of what lies ahead and what they are going to face in not so distant future. You see, it is our hope that when we celebrate our platinum jubilee another 15 years hence, by that time, we would have entirely converted our way of working, way of living, and way of moving forward to completely with the new technologies in vogue. So therefore, it's important that all of us understand from the specialists, from the experts who have kindly joined us for this webinar, and we look forward to them to take us forward. Thank you very much, and we welcome the speaker, and I very much welcome the lauded audience which has joined with the same objective as mine, to learn. Thank you.
Thank you very much. Now I would like to introduce our moderator. Mr. Pradeep Khanna is the moderator for this webinar, and he is based out of Sydney. Pradeep is a live wire, and he's passionate about technology. Pradeep Khanna is the Executive Director, Asia Pacific, Sydney Chapter, President, and Global Co-Chair, Education for the Global Virtual Reality, Augmented Reality Association. Pradeep is also the founding member of IEEE ICICL, X-Reality for Learning and Performance Augmentation, Special Interest Group, and CEO of Global Mindset. He has over 30 years of executive experience and has been a leader for IBM Australia and New Zealand, managing various countries. Pradeep is a regular speaker in international conferences, and in the past year, he spoke at 27 international conferences around the world. He is an MBA and MSc in computer science from universities in Australia and a BTech from our own IIT Delhi. Mr. Pradeep Khanna, over to you.
Thank you very much, Somnath, and thank you very much, Amitabh. It is a great opportunity to be sitting over here and talking to people all over the world, including Professor Puri from Milan in Italy and my friends in New Delhi. I was remembering the time when I physically attended the CI conference in New Delhi in 2019 when I spoke about virtual reality, augmented reality. Yes, as you absolutely rightly said, we are living in totally different times. Technology adoption at such a massive scale, it is unprecedented, and it has forever changed the way we are going to live, learn, and work. People who had not even heard about Zoom before are happily zooming away. So that is the brave new world. And just a few days back, I was reading in the papers about how the Indian government is now piloting a project using drones to map out land records in the villages and creating a digital identity. This identity, which can be uploaded onto mobile phones, can then be used as a collateral with banks for working capital management. And the mobile bit is also very, very interesting simply because there are close to a billion mobiles in India and almost 500 million smartphones in India. So, what I talked about just now is just one example of emerging technologies. The beauty of the whole thing is when you talk about emerging technologies, taxonomies are still emerging, standards are still emerging, yet there are thousands and thousands of companies in India alone who are involved into emerging technologies. And the best outcome is achieved when you fuse together different emerging technologies. So today we present to you a very dynamic panel. We present to you perspectives from academia. We present to you perspectives from industry. We present to you perspectives from consulting. So stay tuned and let me kickstart by introducing the panel members. Being the gracious host that I am for this particular part of the webinar, I will first introduce our guest from Milan. This is Professor Vincenzo Puri. Professor Puri is a professor at University of Milan. He is also a visiting professor at University of Texas, Austin, also at George Mason Universities. He's actively involved in IEEE. This is where Vincent and I share a common thread. And he is going to talk today about perspectives as he sees them happening across in emerging technologies in Europe, as well as from an academic perspective as he intertwines with industry over there. Professor, can you please raise your hand? And a big round of applause for Professor Puri. Second, I introduce to you another Somnath. Yes, we had a Somnath who kickstarted this webinar. Now, are we talking to his avatar or is it a new person by itself? Somnath number 2, Somnath Mitra. Somnath, can you please raise your hand? Somnath comes with a very, very interesting background. He gets a combination of industry and academia. Till a couple of years back, he was vice president with Yes Bank, looking after infrastructure projects. Now he's just about completing his studies, a PhD on smart cities. And he's worked with a number of leading technology companies as well, including IBM, Ericsson, and so on and so forth. Please give a round of applause to Somnath number 2.
Thank you, sir.
And please, I want you to showcase that you're not an avatar of Somnath number 1. Okay. Now over to our presenter number 3. So as you notice, we have gone from academia to academia come industry. Now we go on to the industry. And I present to you Anand Kitepa. Anand has been actively involved in emerging technologies as well as specifically on virtual reality, augmented reality, 3D modeling for 27 years. I used to talk about in earlier conferences that these technologies are around for 25 years. So it looked like Anand has predated them also. So Anand is the founder and CEO of a company called Vector Soul. It has done a lot of infrastructure projects and it has some good references in regard to especially virtual reality, augmented reality in infrastructure. Please give a round of Anand to Anand. And Anand, can you please raise your hand?
Thank you. Thank you.
Fabulous, fabulous. And last but not the least, as we move from academia to industry and now to consulting, the beauty of a consultant is he borrows your watch and tells you the time. I hope our consultant today is not doing the same thing, but this consultant is a very distinguished gentleman. He did his BTech from IIT. Which IIT was that? That was IIT Madras. And then he did his BTech from MTech from IIT Bombay. And he started his career with Larsen and Toubro, then went on to Thermax, and then continued on with Larsen and Toubro till recently. He was a very senior vice president with extensive experience in infrastructure sector and specifically more so in oil and gas. So he gets some fabulous experience as a consultant, as now the role that he's playing, he gets an opportunity to look at different solution providers and different customers. So Suhas, can you please raise your hand and a big round of applause to Suhas. So now the round of introductions is over. So should we all say thank you very much and bye-bye? Not at all. We kickstart the discussion and we go to Professor Puri in Milan. So Professor Milan, first tell me, what is the weather like over there? Has winters already started?
It started, but it's not so cold. Now is
So,
about 20 degrees, more or less.
lovely. So I was just before this session, I was on another call with a gentleman from Austria. And he told me that, man, it's snowing outside my window. I said, wow, great. In Sydney, I don't even see snow. So the first question for you, Professor Pure, what can you tell us? What all work have you done in regard to emerging technologies and especially related to infrastructure? And this is, let me tell you, you have 5 minutes just to give a holistic view and for everybody's benefit. Professor Pure strength is very strongly in AI, that is artificial intelligence and machine language, but he has done a lot of extensive work in a whole lot of other areas. So over to you, Professor Pure. In five
Thank you.
minutes,
Sure.
what have you done in emerging technologies and infrastructure?
In this area, I have been working in various theoretical and application aspects by using artificial intelligence. Basically, my research area from the theoretical point of view is in the area of artificial intelligence from the point of view of the techniques and the optimization of the techniques, especially in neural networks, deep learning, various types of neural networks. The goal has been essentially to try to have tools for addressing real-world applications. In the area of infrastructure, we have been, for example, working in monitoring the tracks of trains, so that the idea was to reconstruct the track of trains by using a laser to collect the profile of the tracks and be able to give information, essential knowledge to the decision makers to perform the maintenance in an optimum way. And we were using trains running at 180 kilometers per hour, so that basically it was not a special slow train. It was typically used in the past. We have been working also in other areas. For example, we have been working in biometrics for recognizing people, for surveillance. Typically, this was an application in the area of airports for safety and security. We have been working also in the area of monitoring and control manufacturing processes and other infrastructures to support the daily applications.
Thank you very much, Professor
Thank you.
Puri. And it is lovely to see whether you travel by train or whether you fly, you cannot escape the work that Dr. Puri has done. His artificial intelligence and machine learning will capture you over there. So lovely. Let's move across to Somnath Mitra. Somnath, could you tell us, number one, what have you been doing in infrastructure and emerging technologies? But I also want you to give at a high level in 5 or 6 minutes, what kind of emerging technologies are we talking about?
Thank you, Pradeep sir, and thank you, panelists. And I would like to start with welcoming the attendees of this webinar, the keen listeners and the keen audience. It's a very, very interesting topic to dwell at this juncture of our economy, the whole infrastructure development that is we are witnessing in our country as well as in South Asia. I can very well see there is a fair amount of attendees coming in from Nepal, which is a very good, sign. That's on the attendees part of it. I would rather focus on something I called it construction 4.0. Before I take a deep dive on construction 4.0 as requested by Pradeep sir, saying that what am I doing now? So I'm essentially a digital transformation advisor, consulting companies on industry 4.0, Internet of Things, artificial intelligence, machine learning, business application of artificial intelligence and machine learning. So those are my typical assignments I pick up as a digital transformation advisor. Now coming back on construction 4.0, the future of construction, as in be it large infrastructure construction, highways, seaports, airports, malls, as well as the built environment. So all of these are consuming huge amount of technology, emerging technology, and artificial intelligence, machine learning, and deep learning. Lot of these construction project, as I say, construction 4.0 involves deep learning, image processing. uh, I'm sure we will slowly get into the whole realm of augmented reality, virtual reality, immersive technology, slowly as we progress in this particular discussion and the webinar.
So, Somnath, one of the things that I love about emerging technology is that all of us, including myself, we keep throwing around so many acronyms that we get the other person so confused, or also, looking at us in awe as if we have people coming from outer space. So, as the session goes by, we will also translate this into common language as to what do
Absolutely.
we mean by AI, ML, deep learning. Is it that I make a deep dive into a swimming pool and learn over there? Is that deep learning? But let's move on to our speaker number 3, which is Anant. Anant is based in Chennai. So we have in Chennai, I don't know whether it is very hot or not, but Anant, what have you been doing in the 27 years? What is 3D modeling and AR, VR that you've been up to? Can you, and especially in the infrastructure sector? You are on mute, Anant.
Yeah, yeah. First of all, thanks to the CEAI for inviting me over as a panelist, and feel very proud to be a part of such a elite panel here. And I hope all the guests who are attending right now are all staying safe. And let me dive into the question that Pradeep asked me. Yeah, 27 years seems to have flown like a blink of an eye, as if I wore VR and I was traveling. So let me trace back quickly. Try to give you a sense of where we were to where we are today. So that will give you a kind of a 360-degree view of how the industry has matured and how technology has progressed. Somnath, will I be able to share the screen? Okay, I'm going to quickly. Okay, what I'm going to show initially is going to be an animation that we did about, I think so, 17 to 20 years before. For all the panelists, just to give you a sense that it will happen out of a small window on a screen, because that's how much the technology was. Okay, so I'm going to start you there, and I'm going to slowly walk you through where we are today. So let me try playing that animation for you. This is a bridge construction animation that we did about 20 years before for a large construction company. And there is going to be some voice and video as well. Just go through it. I'm going to play only some important sections so that all of you don't spend time watching the full animation. But let me quickly play that for you.
And each span is divided into 12 segments. These segments are stressed together to form the span. Each segment is a four-celled box structure and is shaped to maximize the headroom for the traffic flowing below. These segments are supported by an array of jacks to facilitate alignment in all directions. The reinforcement is prefabricated over a special jig where the bottom mat, the web reinforcement including the sheathing for pre-stressing strands, and the top mat is tied. Produced in a batching plant, transported by transit mixers and placed by pumps. Now the reinforcement cages are placed in the even-numbered segments after removing the end stoppers. The previously cast segments will serve as stoppers now. The inside shutter is moved to the new locations and aligned. The balance capacity travels over two crane girders supported on the vertical bracing. Segment carried by the trailer traveling over already erected spans is brought within the rear end of the launching machine. The EOT crane picks up the segment and the trailer returns. The EOT crane carries the segment through the length of the machine up to a spot where an opening is provided in the bottom bracing. The segment is lowered through the opening and rotated by 90 degrees. And its load is then transferred to the trolley moving over the machine. The hangers dropping from the trolley pick up the segment. This trolley carrying the segment moves to the rear of the machine and aligns the segment. All segments are thus glued and stressed. To the next span. The entire process is repeated to construct by ECC using modern...
So just to give you a sense of how an animation happened in such a small window, and let me show you some of the work that is happening today. If you look, this is the visualization of an airport, which is happening in the Middle East. And if you look at the further end is the terminal, and we are visualizing how the aircraft would come down. So everything here is modeled on 3D, and the kind of photorealism that is available today, thanks to the innovativeness of the display cards as well as the processors, today you could see full screen playback instead of such a small window. So we were also involved in the Statue of Unity, which happened, and some of the the still images for overseas projects. I also take this opportunity to show you a little bit about how VR virtual reality works. So if you see, I just wanted to show you how a typical virtual reality system would be. On the left extreme of the screen, you would see the headset, and there are these triggers which teleport you to a certain distance. And then you have the device from where you can interact, which is what you see the person holding in his right hand.
So Anant, I will get back to you again. I'm seeing some comments coming, and one of the questions which I can imagine people are asking is, when you showed the first video, why was it only in a small box? Why was it not full screen? Any reason for that?
Yeah, very good question, actually, Pradeep. Those days, the video cards were not able to display full screen playback. It couldn't do. They were able to support a smaller resolution, which is 320 by 240, which is only the smaller pixel. And that used to happen out of a 640, 480 was what the VGA cards were. So it is definitely the technology. The technology has grown.
Your voice is dropping in and out.
Yeah, that's because of the processor and the VGA card.
So fabulous. So what we are seeing is the evolution of technology over the years or decades, as you may call it. I will come back to you later for a much more explanation about VR, but let me Now go across to the fourth, but not the least speaker of the day, which is Suhas. Suhas, can you tell us how you've been into, the infrastructure sector and oil and gas? Has it always been with emerging technologies as they were emerging over the last 30, 40 years? Or when did you start dealing with emerging technologies?
Thank you, Pradeep. Thank you for raising this very, very pertinent question. In fact, before I go into responding this question, let me first also thank CEAI, VRARA, as well as FIDIC and Global Mindset, who are the support organizations for this very interesting event. And I can see from the good participant level, that's going to be very popular, and people are looking forward to the discussions. And thanks Somnath Ghosh for inducting me into this event to start with, and also Mr. Amitabh Ghoshal to steer this whole process of organizing such a useful event. Now, coming to your very nice question, in order to answer this question, let me just delve into my background of how I went through my professional career at L&T after coming out from the IITs, first IIT Chennai, Madras, IIT Madras at Chennai, and IIT Bombay at Mumbai. So during my career of over 35, 37 years, largely in the field of projects business, handling different functions starting from R&D and process engineering, proposal engineering, and marketing, business development, international business development, and then project management and steering a business unit activities. The entire evolution of the emerging technologies I have seen in front of my eyes. Anant has already stated that 27 years, how the technology has evolved. About 25 years, 30 years back, just to create a 3D model was a novelty. And that was a great thing during the 90s, to visualize a project on your screen, on your computer screen, and take a walkthrough in a model, but all that is happening on the screen and you're not really walking through the model. Another set of emerging technologies which took the project management processes by storm was the digital and IT-enabled project management processes, starting from the engineering workflows and the complete project management workflows entirely done on the computers. Then came the 3D model technology was evolving anyway, and how the multidimensional modeling in project management processes. That was another very important development that took place in the civil infrastructure parlance, that is called BIM. In oil and gas projects, it's called 3D modeling, and typically there are a few modeling companies who have developed such a technology. And then the fourth element, in terms of time, you can actually see the projects growing on your screen, right from the time that it is started, the civil work is done, the excavation, the foundation building, and then how do you see the project actually growing in front of your screen. And I was involved in steering such activities in L&T during my last few years of my career with L&T. Having gone through different project management functions, I could integrate the project management activities through the digital technologies. And then we got the multidimensional visualized based project management processes. We also integrated a little bit of artificial intelligence, a little bit of virtual reality, a little bit of some of the other technology like AR glasses and QR code based material tracking, and so on and so forth. But then in the last 4 to 5 years, the virtual reality and augmented reality are the technologies which have been evolving and maturing to a great extent. As part of the project business in a large organization, or for that matter, any organization, you have to continuously have your future, the strategic plan in mind, and you have to keep track of the competition. What are the evolving technologies which are coming up in the market, and how do you leverage them? Leverage the power of these technologies into your processes, into your project management or any other business processes, so that you can enhance your efficiencies. You can enhance your effectiveness. You can do the same activities on a shorter time with a lower cost. Only then you can survive in the business. And when the technology helps business, actually is helping the economy of the nation. And that's how the emerging technologies cannot be looked at just as a novel idea, just because the new technologies are there, have come into existence, you must use them. You have to use them to improve your business processes. And that's the key thing. And I think as we go along during this webinar discussion, I think the greater light will be thrown on this aspect. The
Thank you
emerging,
very
yeah.
much. And I'll pick you up on those because you see, at one end, we find that the cost of labor is quite low in India. And so, how do we kind of balance out inducting emerging technologies, but in a responsible way that comes about, and also in a cost effective way? Is some of the questions which come to my mind. But over to that now at a later point in time. I'm back with Professor Puri. Professor Puri, you've done some work in regard to pollution control.
Mhm.
Can you tell the audience a bit as to what was that project about? What were the outcomes that you were looking for? Who were the bodies? Was that a academic study, or was it also in the industry? So over to you,
Thank you. In the area of pollution monitoring,
Professor Puri. His screen, yes,
can you hear me?
yes. Now we can.
Ah, okay. Sorry, I don't know what happened. As I said, in the area of pollution monitoring, I have been basically studying how to create a very low cost, flexible structure to be able to distribute the basic components with a very low cost house by house. So not to have a centralized station collecting the data. So we, with some colleagues, we designed some sensing nodes, and the idea was to be able to process locally some of the information and then send in a wireless way several data to the collecting stations, where we have been able to perform the analysis, the prediction of the pollution in a city. As a test case, we used Taranto and Bari, two cities in the south of Italy. Especially Taranto has a steel factory in the area, so it was very interesting to understand the possible environmental impact of these devices. And having the ability of placing the devices on the window of the houses, it allowed the citizens actually to feel a part of the monitoring infrastructure. And as a consequence, there was a significant involvement of people in observing the trends, what was going on in this infrastructure. And we used also some artificial intelligence techniques to perform the knowledge extraction and the prediction in this perspective.
So, in other words, what you were doing was you were using sensors to collect data and then to use AI for the purpose of predicting
Mhm.
the pollution levels.
Yes, so that
And you
people was aware about what would happen in the next few days.
very good. But you also mentioned that these were low cost. Now,
Mhm.
low cost is a relative term. So, what kind of costs are we talking about? Because when I look at what you did for Toronto, can we do that for New Delhi? So these are questions which come to my mind. So, what is this low cost?
Well, at that time, we tried to use devices like sensors, which were about half a euro or something like that. And we have been using a small Arduino board to collect the data and do some local processing.
Fabulous. Now, let me move on to Somnath. Somnath, one of our audience is asking a question that 3D BIM or 7D BIM? What is the future? What is the emerging technology? How are we going to blend this with AI, ML? What are your thoughts?
Good, sir. Thanks for raising the bar, I must say. Why, we have to move beyond 3D BIM. In India, I can very well say several construction companies, architecture companies are using 5D BIM. Structural engineering companies are using 5D BIM for consulting. I know for sure for built environment, 5D BIM is extensively used. I've heard of RICS, RICS, which is using and consulting companies on those lines. So that is on the 5D BIM scenario in India.
So one question which comes to my mind, Somnath, is that we are talking of three.
Not.
Pradeep, your sound is muted. Please unmute your sound.
Yes, I don't know who muted me, but I'm back on track. So Somnath, my question is that we've talked in terms of 3D, 5D, and 7D, but what is all this 3D, 5D, and what is the difference? Could you
Yes.
talk about that?
3D BIM, which is building information modeling, which is the CAD CAM design, which was very much adopted in India maybe 15 years back, 20 years back. Now it has the 5D version, has the cost element built in and the financial element built in. There is a concept in project management, many of you are aware, on value analysis, which is actually takes care of the forecasted cost, forecasted schedule. And 7D, frankly, in India, we haven't seen case studies.
Okay. So what is heartening is to note that all this 3D and 5D are very much being used in India also.
Yes, sir.
Okay. Now, let me go around to Anant. Anant, one of our audience, Mr. Rakesh Shah, is asking, can you explain a bit about QR code? I know I've seen that Suhas was going to answer this question, but instead of Suhas, I'm asking you to talk about QR code. What is QR code?
Okay, good question again. QR code is nothing but let's say a reference point. I'll give you a good example. Some of the advertisements today carry a kind of a binary code on the top, and you go take your mobile phone on that code. The mobile phone recognizes that and goes to a particular website because the QR code has the website link embedded and it kind of communicates. Similarly, QR codes are also used in augmented reality as well as VR to put a 3D model in a certain point. So QR codes are the base reference points because otherwise the augmented reality system or the headset cannot recognize where the ground plane is because we are able to see with our own eyes where the floor is. But how can a virtual reality headset or a mixed reality headset understand where your floor is? So it doesn't recognize that. So in order to come around that problem, technology has come in the way of a QR code, which is printed on a paper and kind of put on the floor so that people will know that that's the origin or that's the ground plane. So people use it in a variety of ways, but I'm telling you two uses of QR codes.
Fabulous. Now, Suhas, one of our audience, Sushil Dhawan, is asking that one of the common problems of projects is they very often run over time, over cost. How can emerging technologies help in minimize this and getting projects under budget, on time, and so on and so forth?
Yeah, it's a very good question. And this is a question that bothers all the project managers all the time. Because for any project of a large size, large value, and extending over a period of time, maybe 3 years, 4 years, some of the infrastructure projects like power plants can go to 4 to 6 years. Any cracking for cracker project, the petrochemical project also is 4 years long. Now, for the project manager to control the project during its lifetime is to have a very strict and very close awareness view of what's happening in the project. And the projects typically are not executed in one location. The project site may be one location. That's the location of the project which is built. But the activities take place all over the world. You have the project management office in a particular city. The engineering consultant or the engineering entity may be sitting in some other country. Your suppliers will be coming from different countries: Europe, America, Korea, Japan. Then you are licensors, logistics providers. So you need to have a visibility of what's happening in the project. So what I was mentioning some time back is one of the ways in which to get a good visibility into a project activity is to have the multi-D modeling. Now, when you say 4D BIM or 5D BIM or 7D BIM, what is it? This is the additional dimensions that you're adding to the model. 3D model is a three physical dimensions, X, Y, and Z. The fourth dimension that you're adding is a time element. When you say that, when you add the time element, that time element based model will give you whether your project is going in time. At any given point of time, suppose you have a 36-month project. On the month number 18, you should have completed, say, 45% of your project. You should progress should have been 45%. But on month number 18, whether you have actually achieved 45% or whether you're 37% or 65%. So this time element, awareness or visibility of the time element will come from the 4D modeling. So at any given point of time, you will know how much work has been completed. How much work front do you have for your project? Are you in the position to carry on the activities at the site, or are you going to be stuck? The fifth element could be cost. Are you within cost? Are you within the budgeted cost, or have you had an overrun? Sixth element could be resource. Do you have the resource available for a project to undertake the project activities at a particular point of time? So these are the multi-dimensional BIM or multi-dimensional modeling, which will give you a good visibility. And once you have the visibility, once you know the project's hold points, or once you know the hurdles, then it's possible to overcome those hurdles. Then the main mechanism to overcome the hurdles can be many. It can be augmentation of resource. It can be working extended period of time. Instead of 2 shifts, you work 3 shifts. You can modify your construction sequence and make it more time effective. So there are different ways and means which have to be looked into and explored. And that's how you control the project progress at any given point of time. And you have to do this on a continuous basis throughout the project tenure. And that's how the digital technologies, multidimensional modeling is the new digital technologies. 15 years back, we did not have this. So these are the new emerging technologies which can be used to control a project progress in a much more effective way. I hope I have answered your question.
Excellent. And just to add on to the audience, Sushil Dhawan, who was asking this question. Sushil, if you remember, one of the project forecasting tool is earned value. And earned value is in a way which helps you in projecting whether your project is going to end up above budget and over time or under time. Now just imagine that you have a visualization techniques available to you leveraging immersive technologies where you can actually see, where is this, not just getting a cost curve or a delivery curve, but you're also able to see how your project construction is actually shaping out. So these are some more examples of how emerging technologies, especially immersive technologies, can help you in project management. Now, going on a different track, I'm very well aware as I read, living in Sydney, I tend to catch up with my news by reading Indian newspapers. And I was reading some time back that in Delhi airport, they are going to be introducing biometric. So we have Professor Puri who's done some work in biometrics at airports. So Professor Puri, can you share some insights as to what was the nature of work that you do? Because guys, this is where all the Indian airports are headed. So this is where you need to tone up your skills, capabilities to be able to offer and take care of those opportunities that come your way. Over to you, Professor Puri.
Thank you. We have been working in a large European project with many European industries to design the biometric gates of the next generation for the European Union. Basically, what we have done has been to refine an algorithms for biometric recognition, fingerprint and iris. We have been involved specifically in that area. In the project, we also collaborated in face recognition. And the idea was to make algorithms much more robust, not only from the point of view of the accuracy of recognition, but from the point of view of the amount of environmental conditions which were needed. We tried to have techniques with less constraint as possible regarding the illumination, the position of the face, the iris, or the fingerprint, in order to be able to get this biometries without constraining too much the individuals. The goal has been also to be able to provide tools for surveillance, so that it was possible to have cameras distributed in the airports, automatically monitoring people who were moving, and as a consequence to be able to detect possible suspects in the critical areas.
So I see two areas. Sure. Please go ahead.
The third aspect has been the analysis of movement of people in the area in order to trace the trajectories, and as a consequence understand if, and this was providing the basis for understanding if there was a critical behavior, someone who was moving around looking and not just the natural behavior of travelers. And that allowed to alert the attention and look more carefully. And we did all of this by using artificial intelligence technologies, mainly various types of neural networks.
Got it. So which airports have you carried out or are you seeing using this at the moment?
Well, at the moment, this is a very recent project. So basically, these techniques are now under the industrialization phase and will be deployed in the coming years.
In time. So one of the questions which come to my mind is, when it comes to artificial intelligence, end of the day, it is nothing but different ways of mining data. Now, when you mine data in the first place, there's a question of how big a data set you have and also the quality of data which is there. Because at one time it can be garbage in, garbage out. So when you start with projects like biometrics for airport and all that, so does it take time for the AI engine to mature till you collect a significant data, or are you able to get these data sets from somewhere else as a base point?
Well, it depends on the specific application you are considering. For example, in the case of the airport application, the data sets are typically the data sets made available by police. So you may, if you are considering a face or fingerprint, there are huge data sets that are available. In the case of the project, of our project, we have been lucky since in the project we had a couple of police offices and as a consequence of different countries, and as a consequence they were providing this type of information. Of course, we were not allowed to access directly to the data, but we were providing some tools which were that the police was running and extracting the information for us to configure properly the neural networks.
Got it. Very good.
Of
Okay.
course, we were not allowed to enter in the databases since these are private of the police.
Got it. So thank you very much. And let me go across to another audience question. And for this, I will go across to Somnath Mitra. Somnath, the question is for tracking quality of construction, for quality assurance, how can we use emerging technologies and which emerging technology would you suggest? I know some of the answers, and I will also move back across to other panelists for similar perspectives, but I would like to get your perspectives holistically speaking.
Classic usage or classic use case is a deep learning technology related to computer vision. What does that means is image processing. Now, the specific deep learning technology which is used is something called generative adversarial network. What does that mean? Is essentially it actually matches with the standard image of any image, and it is used to actually evaluate fake images that we see. Similar use case can be used for evaluation of construction quality, be it the raw material quality, work in progress quality, as well as finished material quality. So using primarily something called generative adversarial network technology, which is an image processing technology, and there are solutions. I am aware there are solutions in Europe which is being used for remotely doing a quality control of raw material, in-process material, and finished product.
Okay, so now I want to go to Anand. Anand, for the similar question, that is, if you want to track quality in construction, how do you use immersive technologies for that?
Very, very interesting, because what happens is that there are a couple of things that are possible. Today, with a mixed reality headset, one can wear the headset like the way I have here. I have a HoloLens here, which if I wear today like this, so what happens is that I can go to a certain site which is under construction, and as a site supervisor, at the end of the day, I can actually transmit the images that have been done today back into the design department, and they can see the video feed of the mixed from the coming from the mixed reality headset that I was wearing, and they can actually mark out areas saying that this work is a little bit patchy or this work has been done well. So today the technology is there available where you can take a live feed from the mixed reality headset and feed it into the probably the stakeholders who can then comment on the quality of the construction as well. So today this is being put to use, Pradeep.
So,
Absolutely correct, sir.
and just to add on to what Anand said, he talked about some geeky looking device which he called head mounted device, and he called it as Microsoft HoloLens, and he called it also mixed reality. I think it is equally important that we just briefly touch upon what is this mixed reality. And for this, ladies and gentlemen, let me go back to the time on July 2019 when I was actually speaking at the Infrastructure Summit in New Delhi. We were physically located in a room. I was standing in the real stage. You were all sitting on real chairs, and we were all real people interacting with each other. Now, let's go on to and try and get an experience of landing on Mars. Can we do that in reality? No, unless we are Elon Musk, we cannot do that. So what we do is we create an artificial environment and we call that environment as a virtual environment, and that when we experience landing of Mars in that environment, that is virtual reality. So as you go from the real world to the virtual world, in between stages, when you keep on adding digital objects, this entire spectrum is called mixed reality, which is a combination of the real and the virtual world. And the first stage between that is augmented reality, where you add on digital objects. And the example, that's why the word augmented reality comes in. It is augmenting digital objects, that is adding digital objects. And one of the common use cases is like if you were to go for a shopping in a retail outlet and you have a catalog, let's say you wanted to buy a chair, and you have the QR code or you have the catalog and you scan that, and a digital image of a chair comes up. You can see where you want to keep it in your room, and whether you want this shape of the chair, this color of the chair, whatever it is. So the example which Anand Kitipa gave was, and it is called a mixed reality device, but it is nothing but an augmented reality by way, because you're creating digital images. Now here on, I want to go on to Suhas for another audience question. So, Hars, it is very good to talk about all these, emerging technologies, and potentially they may be requiring investment. So, are they only for big projects? What about the small projects and small contractors? How good or bad, or how useful are emerging technologies for small contracts, small contractors, small projects?
It's a very relevant question, Pradeep, and I'm not sure who was the person who posed this question. But as I mentioned in my initial talk, brief talk, the emerging technologies are not for the sake of using some fancy technology and make our processes look fancy. That's not the intention. The intention is, does it help your processes? Does it make your processes more efficient? Does it save you cost? Does it save you time? So whether it's a big company or small company, the effectiveness, the desire to improve effectiveness or efficiency is the same. And when I'm a small company, I want to grow big. So the way to go big is to improve your efficiencies, reduce your costs, improve your profitability, and that's how you gain more and more business, and that's how you can grow your business. Now, when it comes to, say, virtual reality and augmented reality, just as an example, these are the technologies which are usable in any given field, whether it's an oil and gas company or oil and gas operations, or whether it's an infrastructure project implementation organization, whether it's a railway project or whether it's a port project. The emerging technologies can always be useful. For example, there is a very interesting application called remote assistance. Remote assistance is an augmented reality application. Now, imagine there's a work, some work is going on at a particular site. It could be construction site, and the construction technician or somebody who is working at the site, he hits a hurdle, and there's a machinery breakdown or some problem happens, and he's not able to resolve that. Your work has come to a standstill, and the expert is sitting somewhere else. Now, if you are supported by an augmented reality application such as the AR glasses, or you can call it the smart glasses. Again, the Microsoft HoloLens can be something similar to that, where the person who can wear these glasses, the technician at site can wear the glasses, and whatever he sees is seen also by the expert because they are connected. And next moment, the expert is available to the person at site to provide the guidance, provide the instructions, provide the annotation, understand what the problem is there at the site, and he can guide the site technician to solve the problem. So the person doesn't have to travel. The expert doesn't have to travel all the way from wherever he is, maybe some other part of the world. And he can provide this guidance through the augmented reality mechanism. So whether it's a small company or a big company, the emerging technologies are going to be there to stay. And the earlier and the faster you adopt them, the better it will be for you, because they are going to be enhancing your efficiencies, work efficiencies.
So, and this question had been raised by Satish Kumar. And Satish, is this category of immersive technology, which is remote assistance, which is getting the highest level of traction in the COVID times. We are seeing so many inquiries coming over for, a company based in Rajasthan is shipping something out to Chennai, but the people cannot travel there for helping in installation. The skill sets of how do you train those people at site, and this is where augmented reality, and it does not necessarily have to be only smart glasses or HoloLens. You can also do it with a mobile phone or a tablet. Of course, there is a balance between cost and quality, and therefore you may not get the same level of what you are able to get with HoloLens or with smart glasses, but this is just to give you a perspective. Now I see another question which has been there by Harihara Iyer, and it relates to uh, power. So let me go off to Professor Puri. Professor, what work did you do in electricity management? You are on mute, Professor Puri.
Sorry, for some reason it was not unmuting.
Yes.
Thank you for the question. In the area of electric power systems, we have been working on various applications for data analysis. The main goal has been to try to understand the trends, both of production and the consumption of the energy in some geographical areas, so as to provide the companies better opportunities for bidding on the market during the energy auction, and as a consequence to get the best prices and be able to bet in the best way, also in the perspective of reducing the costs for the customers. And this is very essential in order to retain and expand the set of the customer network in a very competitive market. The second area in which we have been working with artificial intelligence has been the area of balancing the generation of energy with, especially with the renewable sources, solar panels specifically, and the purchase from the smart grid. The idea has been to try to implement a system, a rather low-cost system for houses and small buildings, especially for rural areas. And this allowed actually to use publicly available data for the prediction of the radiation, of the solar radiation, as well as the analysis of the possible losses of the energy due to the environmental conditions, and the optimum balance of the electric load attached to these devices in order to exploit as best as possible the transformation capability from the natural sources, from the solar radiation, for example, to the electrical radiation. And this was really an interesting experience, especially to be used in small, very small plants where you do not want to add expensive measurement systems in order to do this kind of balances.
Thank you very much. Now over to Somnath. Somnath Mitra. See, broadly, what we are talking about is architecture, engineering, and construction, AEC as it is called. In a way, this also reflects a project life cycle. Could you tell us that how different emerging technologies can be used in different stages of a project life cycle?
Good you asked that question. You know, any project, construction project, as we say, construction 4.0, you know, involves a lot of vendors, contractor, payments. Payment is very, very important aspect of any project management. I'm sure you will agree. Uh, and secured vendor payment. Yeah, mind the word secured vendor payment. Companies, construction companies have implemented ERP, SAP, or an Oracle brand, or a, you know, there are several ERP brands that are there. Now, what we will see in India, we have seen these use cases in Europe. We have seen these kind of use cases in North America. What we will see in India is usage of blockchain for secured vendor payment, secured contractor payment. And there are several, I won't say several, there is a very clear framework which is provided by the blockchain consortium called Hyperledger, called something called Hyperledger Fabric for secured vendor payment and supply chain management. So that is one area which will emerge in India soon. I will assume large companies like L&Ts and the likes will, you know, adopt this, and will see the proliferation in the Indian market. So definitely blockchain is one thing which will emerge. And there are other emerging technologies, as I mentioned about image processing. Somebody in the chat window mentioned about how do you do authentication using facial recognition. So facial recognition will also come in for secured login, secured access, because many of the construction sites may not be very, very secured. You know, I'm sure you will agree. So how do you secure them? So from a security point of view, as well as from a safety point of view.
So, what I am hearing is that actually the digital transformation of the construction sector is what Construction 4.0 is about. While the fundamentals of the construction industry still remain the same, it is the way we do work. How do we optimize resources? How do we, as we talked earlier in terms of project management, how do we bring the projects more in line with what the requirements are under budget and within the scheduled times? This is where you use but the whole thing is that as you move from architecture, you go from visualizing the future to engineering, design, and construction, where you go into quality aspects. And then you go into operations. All of these transform different applications of emerging technologies. At this stage, I will go across to Anand. Anand, do you have something else to showcase to the audience?
Yeah. Okay. Sure. I'm going to probably share my screen again. So I wanted to share this screen simply because I was, enamored by the way the future is going to look. If you look at this particular screen, I wanted to share with you that there are 4 people in this meeting and 3 physically present, and both of them using mixed reality headsets, as you can see. And there is the third person who is using an iPad, which you can see. The fourth person is almost like a ghost. Now, what is happening is they are talking about a design of let's say something which looks like a cement plant. And this cement plant exists digitally. They have actually augmented that 3D data onto a physical table, and all of them are looking at it from their own perspectives. So if you see this person on the right, the gentleman who's wearing the headset is looking at it from his point of view, so is the lady. This particular gentleman who's holding the iPad is looking at it from an iPad as well. The fourth person is actually coming out from a different continent and looking at it through the cloud server. So you could be in absolutely geographically different places, and you can get the best teams to work together in a very collaborative way, especially during COVID times when traveling becomes very, very difficult. And I think so, something like this, where you take the digital data out of the computer and put it into the space. This is what we call as spatial computing. Instead of saying AR, VR, XR, MR, we call this spatial computing because the digital data doesn't sit in the computer anymore. It comes out in the space. So when I wear a mixed reality headset like this, what I see is I can put the data anywhere in the space. Imagine if I can put the particular design that I'm working on and get my co-designers together and put the entire model on the table in front of me. The kind of visualization, the way the problems can be discussed is far, far superior. And as you would know, success of a project depends on best communication possible. And the best communication tool is nothing but tools like mixed reality headsets and virtual reality, which set the expectations right. And once you set the expectations right, there are less of disputes and there is a lot of togetherness in making sure that the project is successful. So I just thought I will share this screen alone. If that.
Thank you very much. And I go across to Suhas. And Suhas, the question is, we keep hearing about digital twins. Now, what are digital twins and how are they helpful to us in the infrastructure in the AEC space?
Very interesting. Sorry, am I? Yeah, I am on. You can hear me, right?
Yes.
Yeah. Twin. Twin is something of same type but two number. So digital twin is a replica of something which exists in the real form, is replica in the digital form. Just a simple explanation of the term, what is a digital twin? So this digital twin concept can be applied to many things. It can be applied to a project, it can be applied to an equipment, it can be applied to any situation in life. So when it comes to infrastructure, for example, let's talk about an airport. Digital twin of an airport would be a complete model in the digital form of the airport with not only the dimensions which are replicated, but all the parameters, the physical parameters in terms of the number of passengers which may be going through the airport on a daily basis, number of flights which will be taking off, or the kind of ground facilities the airport may be requiring. So when you replicate a physical object into a digital form, that's a digital twin. And in different types of emerging technologies, you can make use of this digital twin in different ways. For example, in virtual reality, a digital twin can be used to get an immersive experience of actually uh, being in that particular project. It may be an airport, for example. You actually can enter the airport, go through the entire process of checking in and boarding the aircraft for a passenger, from the passenger's perspective. It could be something different from a pilot's perspective. It could be something developed from the different from the grounds staff perspective. So when you replicate all the functionalities of the real object into the digital form, that becomes a digital twin. And then you actually can experience the whole thing in digital form, in the virtual form, without having the object in front of you. Just last week, there was a headline. You know, everybody knows one of the largest oil companies in the world, ExxonMobil. The headline said, ExxonMobil has used VR, virtual reality, to simulate their future projects before even the project has been, the work has started. So that's a digital twin. So they have created a digital twin of the, say, a refinery. You have, you can actually have the complete operation of the refinery happening in virtual form. That means you can have the crude coming in, the crude distillation happening, and the various parameters of the crude tower or the fired heater, crude heater, and then into these subsequent sections in the refinery. An operator can actually see be in the control room in the virtual form and operate all the equipment on the systems in virtual. So all this happened before even the construction has started. So people can get trained in the digital twin, be prepared well in advance when the actual object is ready for operation or for doing any physical work. So that's in a very, very brief nutshell what is a digital twin and how it can be used. And there are different technologies can be integrated into the digital twin to bring in those functionalities.
Thank you very much, Suhas. And I go across to Somnath for an audience question. So, an audience is asking, how do you leverage cloud technologies at site?
Yeah, it's a good question. Whoever asked, it's a very relevant question. Companies like Google Cloud Platform, Amazon Web Services, even Microsoft Azure are coming out with a whole paradigm called for smart construction or Industry 4.0, so to say. And what they are saying, there's a whole new paradigm for construction or industry which is emerging, which is everything as a service. When I say everything as a service, human capital as a service, equipment as a service, testing as a service, design as a service, and there is, when I say service, there has to be some kind of a service level agreement. So that those kind of paradigms are emerging in India. I do not know how much L&T and the likes are adopting in India, but I know Japanese companies, Japanese EPC companies are definitely adopting these kind of paradigms where everything is a service, including the South Koreans.
So, what happens, Somnath, if it starts raining? Do these clouds disappear?
So, as they say, cloud is a word which was coined by Steve Jobs in one of the lectures, and somebody asked this question: where will all these storage happen? He points towards the sky, somewhere in the cloud.
Absolutely right. And you see, that is exactly what it is. And this question was asked by Satyajit Manjeria. And Satyajit, I ask you to go back to the example of your Gmail or email that you use. So, all that information and all the emails that we exchange, we are able to access that information or emails any part of the world we are in. So what that means is that all that data is stored somewhere which is accessible over internet from different parts of the world. So similarly, in the same case, go back to the example of a site. And when let's say that you got on a site, especially in the COVID environment where you got different stakeholders, the project manager, some other design guys sitting in different locations. So how can he access the data? That data, if it is uploaded onto some data center, which is through in a cloud kind of a formation, then it can be accessed by everybody. So cloud is now becoming a very fundamental part of everything that we do. Now with this, I go across to Professor Lurie. Professor Lurie, we've been talking about clouds and all this, but I want to come back to the real world and to the world of trains. So, what work have you done on tracks and trains? Recently, I was reading in the newspapers that all trains or some trains in India will be operating at speeds of more than 130 kilometers, and these trains will be all air conditioned. I'm also aware that in Germany, in autobahns, there are no speed limits, and typically cars travel at 200 kilometers per hour. But coming back to the work that you've done on tracks and trains, can you show some insight into that?
Yes, thank you. Well, what we have done by using signal processing and image processing techniques and based on artificial intelligence, we have been able to analyze the images created by laser on the tracks to reconstruct the profile of the track itself, so that it was possible to see if there were some deformation, some wearing of the parts, and as a consequence, be able to provide the information to the maintenance for an advanced maintenance.
We've lost your sound.
Can you hear me?
Yes, now we can.
Okay. I was saying that the goal was to try to make as safer as possible the railways transportation, preventing a possible accident and providing appropriate information to the maintenance. Typically, this operation was done by using slow-moving trains, so that it was possible to collect the information about the tracks by using touch sensors, touch devices, but this required a lot of time and required to suspend the regular transportation on that track for a few hours. Our goal was to use regular trains, even high-speed trains, so that it was possible to collect this information during the regular operation. That was the goal.
Thank you very much. Now over to Anand. And this is for another audience question. This is Vijay. Vijay is asking, how can we leverage emerging technologies and specifically AR, VR in the water ecosystem? So, in the water supply, what are the use cases? Over to you, Anand.
Okay, good question again. And, a couple of things which strike me are while you design water supply systems itself, I think so one of the key things that is possible is do a virtual reality digital mock-up. So what happens is the entire water supply chain itself is from the source till the very end delivery. We can actually, kind of design it and visualize it using a virtual reality headset. And it would look so real that it would in fact look more real than the actual world itself. So we could get it to that accuracy to make it look so much in the real world. That is one application that I can straight away think in terms of design. And I think so while once operational, I think so. In terms of augmented reality, you could meter to find out the metering of these systems, the maintenance, the regular operations can also be done on augmented reality by wearing a mixed reality headset, which can also capture data from IoT devices and it can relay back to the mixed reality headset that I was wearing. So these are a couple of applications that I can straight away think that is possible in water supply and water supply systems. And if there is any more that can be added, Pradeep, I would like you to also pitch in.
Absolutely right. In fact, some of my good friends with Melbourne Water and in Australia, most of the water supply systems have been privatized with other water companies. One of the most popular use cases is training, especially safety training. And this is peculiar to Australia because most of the land in Australia is barren, and you can very often find that if you are going into certain remote areas, you are coming across snakes, and so those kind of issues. So very good use cases in terms of training people when they are doing the services. But to add on design, again, Melbourne Water is doing a lot of work on design part, in water supply, in operations, trainings. There are a number of examples. So now another audience question, and for this, it is open to any of the panelists. And we have been going for 90 minutes, which is 1.5 hours, and we are on to the home stretch now. And folks, remember, this is the journey that we are on as we jointly look at transforming India, the Indian infrastructure system. How do we take it to the next level? Looking at the current environment that we are living in, and we will build the stories. Today's session was more like an introduction into emerging technologies to look at different industry sectors and to look at different emerging technologies. But we shall also make deeper dives. Now, the question is now, how can we leverage emerging technologies for environmental management? I know Professor Dury has already talked about the pollution control and the predictive aspects using AI and using sensors. Does anybody else want to add on to this, Somnath, or for that matter, anybody else from the panel? Anybody who wants to do that can raise his hand, or even Professor Puri if he wants to add something more. And this question is by Arvind Brara. So while the guys over here are thinking what to do, let me give you an example. In environmental management is case of virtual reality. Typically, you can create. You see, when you use virtual reality or in situations when either you need to create visualization as something which does not exist, and in doing so in real life, it is very expensive, it is very risky, or it cannot be done. So when it comes to environmental management and to, there are a number of use cases which are already floating around in Australia where there are groups who are focused on looking at getting people to showcase what is the impact if they do not have a behavior change towards environmental management. So you are able to visualize, you know what kind of a world will we be living in if we do not um, manage this very well. Now this is just one particular application, and there is a whole lot of application of AI ML which can be used into, because remember, what is AI ML? End of the day, and we talk about neural networks and XYZ, but it is the basic concept of data mining. So you got a large amount of pieces of data. Now you can again go into another discussion of structured, unstructured, and so on and so forth. But how do you make sense out of the data? How do you do some predictions? How best do you manage? So there are different ways of doing that. Now, coming back to the panel, do you want to add anything more to the question? If nothing else, then
I
we
will add.
yes. Who is that?
This is Suhas.
Yes,
Yeah,
Suhas.
yeah. I saw the question from Mr. Brara, and also very nice lead into what could be the possible answer to this question. Basically, the question is, for any infrastructure project, how are you going to be within the limits of the pollution control board's norms, for example? Any project generates a lot of emissions. These could be solid emissions, liquid emissions, gaseous emissions. How do you control these by using emerging technologies? One technology could be bringing the awareness of the effect of the solution, and this is what you also touched upon, Pradeep. Uh, the possibility of AI being used very much there. In my opinion, although I'm not sure such a application has been developed, but I'm sure with virtual reality, such a awareness application can be developed, where the people who are involved in conceptualizing the project, or who are involved in doing the engineering for the project and conceiving the project, they can actually visualize the effect of uncontrolled emissions of any particular pollutant. And these models can be created, and they can actually be get an immersive experience of if these pollutants are not uh, kept under control, and then they can actually experience the disaster that may be awaiting the environment or the city or the place where this project is coming up. So one is bringing in the awareness of the effect of the pollutants and the emissions, which if they are allowed to happen without any control, then what can happen to the world, to this town or the city, and thereby at a broader level the world itself, if such a thing happens all over the place. So the awareness is very important of the impact of this, and the need for controlling it, and then you can devise solutions to control. That will be the second story. So I've just addressed the first part, the awareness of the impact of the pollutants or the emittents, which happen from any project, and if they are not controlled, then what is the effect of that?
Thank you very much. And now, in closing, Professor. Oh, yes, I can see Professor Puri raising his hand or finger. So over to you, Professor Puri.
I would like just to add a couple of quick comments about the environment. The first one is, of course, we can use the emerging technologies, including artificial intelligence, or the technologies based on 5G or other augmented realities or virtual realities to create a monitoring system, not only for the air pollution I was mentioning, but water pollution or other type of waste pollution. But we can also consider a preventive action. For example, in cities, we can use all of these technologies for improving the management of traffic, and as a consequence, reducing the pollution we have in the city. We can use the monitoring technologies for managing better the services in a building, especially big buildings, so that we can reduce, for example, the electric consumption in lighting whenever it's not necessary, or cooling systems, and this will implicitly reduce the impact on the environment. In addition, we can use many of the technologies for example, with drones or satellites or other ways to observe the land from above and see if there are critical situations, for example, flooding, some fires in the forest or other critical situations that may deserve attention, and as a consequence facilitate the activities of rescue or other group of helpers. And we can also use this type of information to support the agriculture for smart agriculture, so that we can increase the amount of crops and provide more food to people with possible observation of the dryness of some area where we may need to bring more water. Thank you.
Thank you very much. So, in closing, now Somnath Mitra, in 2 minutes, do you want to add any closing comment
Yes.
on the topic?
Yes. Good. We brought out so many emerging technologies, so many, believe in me. But how do you really deliver these emerging technologies? As in, how are you going to deliver these emerging technology to the user? Very soon we will see the emergence of 5G getting implemented in India. And this 5G technology will actually help to deliver these emerging technology to industry specific use cases. I know for sure that telecom companies are coming out with various use cases so that to leverage their 5G investment. So keep your fingers crossed when I say construction 4.0. Construction 4.0 is great, but to enable construction 4.0, India will have to use 5G technologies and even going forward start researching on 6G technologies. Over to you, Pradeep sir.
Thank you very much, and thank you for bringing in the aspect of requiring critical infrastructure. Also, as we take on more emerging technologies and the infrastructure, we are talking about digital infrastructure. Now, over to you, Anand. Any last minute comments? 2 minutes.
Yeah, I think, as a visual person, I'm going to end it by showing something which is very visual.
Very good.
Okay, so this is going to be a virtual reality of a use case that we did for a bridge design. And, as we are doing it over, let's say, a webinar where there are so many people, there could be some drop frames, but just bear with me. I think so. Let's quickly share the screen and I will show it to you. Just a snippet of what we did for them. Just hang on. So this is a bridge design that we had done. The person who designed the bridge, actually, when he wore the virtual reality headset, could not believe that that was the bridge that he did, because it was so real in front of him. But he finally figured out that he is sitting inside his cabin. And this gives you a visual tour of how the bridge would look if it was constructed. And we've taken the video out of the virtual reality headset. So you would see how the person went through when he wore the headset. Let me play it for you. It does not have any music or any sound, so you'll only see visuals. So this is a cable stay bridge. So if you see the person's eyes are going up to the topmost part. So I'll stop it there. Just wanted to give you a feel of, how it would look if you wear a VR headset. I wish I can distribute virtual reality headsets to all our audience to make them feel how it looks. But unfortunately, because the way that we are in, I'm sure there's going to come a time in the near future where you can do VR over the web and you could wear a virtual.
That's excellent, but that's okay because we can buy Google cardboards for less than 10 rupees in India. I'd much rather that you add on some Bollywood songs and dance to this, to make it much more attractive. So now over to Suhas. Suhas, any last minute comments? 2 minutes.
Yeah, I think the last 1 hour and 45 minutes, we have had a very intense and useful discussions. A lot of ideas came out. And what I would only like to add at the end here is that any technology that you may like to, or any organization may like to adopt, it has to be with a purpose. This has to fit into their strategic plan. And in order to adopt this technology, there's a change management process that has to be followed. And there are certain prerequisites of the change management process, which basically will mean that the technology or the solution that you want to adopt into your business processes, whether it covers all the objectives of that process, whether it covers all the functionalities. Having confirmed that, whether this new technology that you are going to adopt or the new application, whether it's going to achieve your objective of reducing cost, whether it's going to achieve your objective of reducing the time that it takes to complete a particular activity, whether you have access to sufficient hardware, whether the hardware is available at your disposal and within a reasonable cost, whether that hardware you have the annual maintenance taken care of. Otherwise, you buy the hardware and it doesn't start, it develops a problem and there's nobody to resolve that problem. Do you have annual or regular maintenance facility to manage that hardware? Then the overall cost that you're going to invest, are you going to have a proper return on that investment? What kind of timelines that you lose to recover the money that you have invested, or are you going to save the cost? And finally, also the people who are going to be operating with this process, they will have the new process to handle. That means they will need to be trained. So how are you going to handle the training part of it? So all these things which have to be managed as part of the change management process also need to have the blessing of the top management. So this has to be a structured approach, and there are ways in which this can be done. You need to undertake a proof of concept study with a small case to be in hand. Establish all these parameters, and once you have established these parameters, then you expand it, spread it to a larger scale, scale it up, and then once that scale up happens successfully, then you think of other applications, and that's how you change the way you do your business. And as you adopt with these new technologies, you will yourself learn that, yes, why did we not do this earlier? And that's how you will do your business much more effectively, more efficiently, and then grow your business and stand up the competition.
Very well said. And one of the sessions in future, we will also look at the implementation side. So over to you, Professor Fury. Last minute comments, 2 minutes.
Well, the last comment I have is we should never be afraid about new technologies, but we should always use them in a wise way and try to have in mind first the need of the people, and try to use these technologies in the ethical way. So I believe that this aspect is very, very important and should be presented in a more pervasive way in the university courses.
Absolutely well said. And we need to have greater collaboration between industry and academia. Now, with this, we bring this session to an end. And I thank you very much to all of you, to first of all, to all the attendees for taking that time out to listen to this. It shows the interest that you have in taking on emerging technologies in all aspects of infrastructure sector. And thank you very much to all my fellow panelists, Professor Puri, Somnath, Anand, Suhas, for taking the time out to share the great insight. Thank you very much, Somnath Ghosh, for getting the whole thing up and running. And thank you very much to
let me thank you, Pradeep, for being the moderator and doing it in a very successful way. And before we end, let me just invite Mr. President, Mr. Ghoshal, Amitabh Ghoshal, to give his last words. Mr. Ghoshal,
absolutely, please. Absolutely.
Well, all of you, all of the attendees who have been listening to this presentation or interactive presentation would agree that our panelists have made it look very simple. At the end of the presentation, we feel like, yes, we have learned everything and we can start implementing. That is the success of this webinar, that a very complicated and challenging subject has been made it easy and absorbable by ordinary people like us. I thank the participants for being with us and those who are still, holding their interest. I think every participant who had asked a question or put a chat has been answered effectively. I found one of my colleagues had asked about how it can be used in bridge technology. I think he had more than his answer because he even traveled through a bridge, thanks to the audio, the visualization which was done. And, each of you panelists have made it so absorbing that, and we never felt that we are treading into unknown areas. Professor Puri, you brought in your real life experience as a consultant and as a professor and could drill it into us. My youngest panelist, Mr. Somnath Mitra, gave us a clear idea of how this has been being used in the industry. Anand Saab has given us the opportunity of looking through his fancy glasses and the augmented reality, and Suhas has explained it from the point of view of his experiences in the industry. And Pradeep sir, you have led us so well. It had been a really dream run along with you. And before we conclude, I must also thank Somnath Ghosh for making this such a successful event. Many of the people who have left, even they have said that we are missing by leaving from here. It has been so absorbing. And of course, the Diamond Jubilee Committee and the webinar committee of CEI has given us this advantage. But friends, this is only the beginning. This is only an introduction. We have got to make it a regular course, because as Professor Puri said, that it should be in the curriculum. Okay, that is for the future generation. But for people who are already in the industry and groping in the dark, we require continuous training sessions so that we are elevated to the level where it is not just unknown words like AI and VR and ML and all that, but they are really in absorbed technology. I think what I would end that, I mentioned that CEI does not stand only for consultants. It is for the engineering fraternity. And the entire engineering fraternity today needs to be updated, upgraded, and much faster than it had been earlier, because the technologies are moving fast. If we don't catch up, we shall be left behind. And for that, I would again request you panelists that we will plan future sessions and be with us in the objective of making our engineers elevated so that they can match with the technology development together. And I would request those attendees who are not members of CEI to join us in this journey together. Let us move forward and let us have this advantage. Thanks to all of you again. Mr. Somnath Ghosh, do you want to close with any?
No, that's about it. You summed it very well.
Yeah. So we have in this Diamond Jubilee celebration the upcoming webinars, one on dam safety, one on O&M of assets, national assets. You know, we build assets, but we don't maintain, we don't operate it properly. And then there will be another webinar on digitalization, which will bring in the total gamut together. Thank you attendees, and thanks once again to my panelists, my teachers who had educated me over these 2 hours. Thank you.
Thank you.